All right, let's do it live on a Monday edition of the program. I am merely Beau. He is something far more superior. He's the great Z, and it's a Monday off a bye week. How you living, buddy?
I'm doing very well. Happy to be back. Happy to be in Berea. Happy that there's some good news coming out of Berea today, which we'll get to momentarily.
Boy, wasn't that cool, yeah.
It was a great weekend. Fun to watch the NFL. Got to even hit the small ball around and played well, so that was good. I want to congratulate, though, first and foremost, my amazing daughter, Nathan Zegura, on her bat mitzvah over the weekend, which was which was great. And so it was an awesome weekend.
Well, that's great. That is fantastic. And is Pedro involved in this? Was he involved in any way?
No, it was due to...
Even from afar? Was there
was,
messages sent from Pedro?
Yes, he was on a Zoom,
there we go.
as most were, because unfortunately with the pandemic, you couldn't have the traditional bat mitzvah. We had a beautiful service. Arden worked so hard, and she crushed it, and it was awesome. A very, very proud father. Very proud.
You should be. She's about as impressive a young lady as you'll find. So that is a great job out of you. While you are proud, Bootsy and I suffer a 2-1 laser tag loss to his brothers in night laser tag last night, which is very disappointing. Bootsy, frankly, is out of the will. He has a really hard time understanding to stay in the base and protect the base. He wants to come with me as nightfall descends upon us. He wants to come with me in the woods and hunt the brothers, where I put him in the tree fort. He's up top. His tag is covered. He's
safe.
Poach. And he's safe, pal. And he won't. He refuses to just stay, and it cost us a victory. So he and I are going to have some long strategy talks. We had some this morning over as he was eating his Captain Crunch. And his solution to the problem was that we need to change guns, that he needs to use the orange gun and I need to use the red gun, to which I said, I don't know that that's it. More so as you just staying in your elevated perch and poaching your brothers. And he said that he wants to hunt. And I said, well, we'll lose a lot then if you continue to do that, son. And so that was the big lesson. We did chase the ball around. I played with the boys on Saturday, which honestly was it checked off my bucket list of golf in November in Ohio. I hadn't done that previously.
Same.
And so was able to, and it was spectacular.
Oh, it was... Sunday morning was absolutely perfect. It was great. By the way, though, listen, his nickname's Bootsy the Bold. Bold often now in today's society is linked to strategy. Bold strategy, Cotton. Bold strategy, Boots. And it's not necessarily the right strategy. And I will say that is a difficult thing to communicate. And that's one of the things that, as I talk about some of my high-quality parenting, when I'm playing Fortnite with my kids and we're a squad together, when we took the leap as a group, well, first of all, Bryce is just unbelievable at it, and Arden's gotten way better. And I've kind of climbed up, but my role was to just get us to employ real strategy and tactics. And
that's right.
And once we were initially, they want to rush. They want to get into the fracas.
Yep.
But sometimes it's about triangulation. It's about strategy, about being secure, as you said, a base, having a base where you are safe, and they have to come to you. The importance of high ground. High ground is half the battle.
It's the whole battle, G.I. Joe. I mean, it's like
that's right.
Knowing is half the battle, and you know where the base is, and you can protect it if you're Bootsy. So, you hate to take an L because his brothers run their mouths all night, so you hate to see that.
You might have to call on the former Secretary of the Navy, because maybe sometimes when it comes from the parent, it's not as effective. But if you have the former Secretary of the Navy saying, "Listen, these are the tactics you need to employ," maybe that resonates with young Bootsy.
That would be amazing. Epic.
Sure, you'd be happy to oblige.
This is your strategy you need going forward.
Yeah.
So lots to get to on the program. It was while I love a Browns Sunday, it was nice that I've never had this time up in my time in Ohio where a bye week and perfect weather hit and collided, and it was awesome.
What a marriage.
To not be.
Make it happen again.
It really was.
It's really great.
It really was incredible. I don't know if we'll ever have another one like it, but I sure as heck enjoyed this one. Let's get into the OBM Hot Topics. Ohio Business Machine, preferred copier provider of your Cleveland Browns, so all the X's and O's for your office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. Your Cleveland Browns are back in the building today and on the practice field here within the hour. Baker Mayfield, as you probably have heard by now, will not be on the field today. Here is your statement from the team on this. This reserve list category is created for a player who either tests positive for COVID-19 or has been quarantined after having been in close contact with an infected person or persons. Per agreed upon NFLPA policy, clubs are not permitted to comment on the player's medical status other than referring to roster status. Clubs may not disclose whether a player is in quarantine or is a positive to COVID-19. Here is your statement from the Browns. The Cleveland Browns were informed Saturday morning that a staff member tested positive for COVID-19. Contact tracing was conducted. Close contacts were immediately self-isolated. When the team returned to work following the bye on Monday, it will follow the NFLPA intensive protocol. We'll continue to work closely with the league, medical experts on the appropriate next steps, with the health and safety of our players, coaches, and staff members remaining our highest priority. So the soonest Baker could come back would be Wednesday, back into the team. This is our reality. And we saw it with Stafford last week, missed the entire week, and then Saturday gets negative test and Sunday plays, but missed an entire week. We've seen this throughout the league, frankly. This is the reality of playing football amidst a pandemic, my friend.
It is. And again, we knew the Browns had been lucky and they're still one of the few teams that at this point, as far as we know, that have not had a player test positive, which is a rarity. It's becoming, as you said, more and more common around the league as, this pandemic is more and more prevalent, unfortunately, in our country and in the world. And so trying to go ahead and deal with that is something that the Browns are going to have to do. The good news is, were this a normal week, returning on Wednesday would typically be the first day of practice. And now we practice on a Monday, so he'll miss that, but he'll be able to do, the remote learning that everybody else is going to be doing anyway because we're in the intensive protocol. But yeah, it's just part of the reality. But sometimes, there's not this isn't necessarily bad news. It's not ideal news. But today there also was very, very good news, Beau. Very good. The bat signal was sent out.
It was one thing to see what a setup out of you. What an enormous B you just flopped on the table. Here's what I would say. That it wasn't so much the email, it was the social media, which was just ready.
Allie killed it
with the bat signal, my friend.
Yep.
And this is pretty good, and that is Nick Chubb being activated. And what a boost this is coming off the bye week.
It's a huge boost, and I think we've seen. I can say one other running back that I would say not only is running in a very similar offense, but that I would put in the stratosphere of Nick Chubb in a season where running backs have struggled. I mean, Kamara's been great, but he's been doing it much more as a receiver than as a runner. Dalvin Cook's the name that comes to my mind. And Dalvin Cook, Dalvin Cook, geez, proud member of the Sooning Snakes. Thank you very much, Dalvin. But let's not forget, Dalvin Cook earlier this year missed a game. And he was injured, missed a game due to injury. In the 2 games since coming back from said injury, Dalvin Cook, 52 carries, 269 yards, 5 touchdowns, and he's also added 109 yards and a touchdown receiving. So that's good. So Nick Chubb, come on back and do some of that Dalvin Cook stuff if you smell what I'm cooking.
Yeah, you can smell what he's amazing. The gear that he shifted into on the long touchdown run I think it was in the fourth quarter yesterday.
Yeah, 70-yarder.
Yeah, that was incredible that late in the game to be able to do that. A really wild day in the NFL, and I know we'll talk a lot more about it as the show goes on, but the idea of Dallas leading Pittsburgh the entire game, and at times the whole first half Pittsburgh couldn't do anything offensively, and then finally Pittsburgh's able to sort it out. The idea that Tua could outduel Kyler Murray in the desert and get a win there, and both those guys were brilliant, but the idea that the Chargers again lose on the last play of the game. They had 2 shots at it, and Herbert played brilliant and threw 2 great balls, and it didn't happen. The young players around the league, Josh Allen, just unbelievable return to prominence. You gave us that on the fantasy last week to play him. That was a smart job. That's a good job out of the good doctor right there, reminding us to play him. He was exceptional. And, for them, I almost wonder with Buffalo if they've kind of almost reached the Baltimore stratosphere from the standpoint of if they can get ahead, they're hard to come back on because of the way that kid plays.
Yeah.
And their defense is good.
It's solid. It's stout. Yeah. There were a lot of things that jumped up, but you went into 2 of the games that hurt us. 2 of those finishes were bad for the Browns. In fact, so bad that the Browns are on the outside of the playoffs looking in despite being 5-3. You referenced the Chargers. Why are we running fades? And if we're doing it, why are we running to the third string tight end? And why are we not doing it to Keenan Allen?
Please?
Well, if you run that same formation and you have one-on-one over there, then he can run a slant. He can run the fade stop that Tyreek Hill ran against for the Chiefs, which is you open up so many things. Stop calling fades down there. Ridiculous. It's not a high percentage play. It just isn't.
No.
This isn't college where you get insane mismatches. Stop it.
No, and they did it back-to-back plays. It was
ridiculous. Crazy. And that hurt. That's a Raiders win. Then Zane Gonzalez, former Brown, short from 49? Dead center?
Right.
What?
Looked dead center, straight as can be, and it was a 41-yarder, right?
49.
Oh, it was 49.
But
okay.
still.
I thought it was 40. Still, yeah, short. And he'd hit from 56 earlier in the year, so that was particularly
Did he hit
troubling.
Fat? Was it like a fat golf shot?
He kept talking. I saw him. I'm sure you saw the same. He was talking to the holder, and they were having a conversation. He was dumbfounded.
And the holder's Andy Lee, also a former Brown.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, it was a wild day in the NFL, and was capped by a game last night that. How do you see that coming? How do you see 38-3 with the Saints?
But not quite like this. Not quite like this. No.
Not quite like that. No. Not quite like that, my friend. That was incredible. The way that they beat down the Bucs the way that they did. On your left, saying I don't know who the best team in the NFC is. I have no idea. And now, listen to your point. The AFC has gotten interesting with what's happened, and now in Miami making a little run at this thing. So we're halfway home, and we're going to have some work to do. Every game we play, starting this week with Houston,
it's a huge game.
Got to take care of your business. You got to get them. I think 5-3 minimum is what's going to be. You got
to be 10-6,
maybe 4-4, but I think 10-6 guarantees it. But 4-4 is the very. Then you're going to leave it to chance, because there's a lot of bad teams in this league, guys. Lots of bad teams. Go ahead, Gibby. I thought Gibby was saying.
I thought he was too. I thought we were going to get a little dynamite dropping.
I totally agree. 10 wins, I think you're in good shape. 9 wins, you're counting on other people. I don't want to be counting on other people going to Week 17 against the Steelers.
A lot of bad teams.
I don't care how good the Steelers are and who they sit and who they don't sit. I don't want to leave anything to chance.
No, you can't, and that's why it's so important. What we talked about in the first half. Look, that Raiders game. We're still all pleased with 5-3, and that's the spin. Not even spin, but that's how you want to look. 5-3. We would have signed up for that at the midway point, guaranteed. But that was one of the ones that you had to have. Being 5-3, beating the Raiders, but having lost the week before to the Bengals, is a different 5-3. You're in the playoffs. You're in the playoffs 5-3.
That's right, tiebreaker. Yep.
The Colts game, the Raiders game, those were huge, huge games, and now. You've got to, as we said, here's the path. We'll lay it out for you. You got to go at least 2 out of the next 3. You've got to sweep the New York teams, and you've got to beat one of Baltimore, Tennessee, or Pittsburgh. Because right now you're 0-3 against teams in the playoffs. You have 3 more games against teams definitely in the playoffs. You got to find a way to be 1-5 at least going in, and then look. Once you're in, throw all that out. Anything can happen in a game. It's a fumble here, it's a turnover there, it's a stagnant start. You could see that was the Steelers just took the Cowboys lightly. They were not up for the game. They roll out our helmets.
Right.
Nobody cares. And then at the end, they had enough metal to get it done. It ended up being certainly more interesting than it needed to be, but they got it. They took care of their business. I think you saw, honestly, that there isn't one, and I still think Pittsburgh is the most complete team, but there isn't one dominant team in the league. Everybody's got flaws.
Pretty close.
They're close, but
they do. Kansas City's pretty close. I think Mahomes is 25-1 touchdown to interception.
It's absurd, but yet they still barely beat the Chargers. They lost to the Raiders.
Well, yeah.
That was a competitive game with Carolina.
Division games can be tricky. But division games are tricky. Carolina, and we did have that with the scores as well, Carolina plays hard every week, and they've got weapons. And now McCaffrey's back. And you're talking about Curtis Samuel, McCaffrey, Anderson, and Teddy, all guts. Incredible on the drive, and got him right into it. And they're playing inspired for Matt Rule.
Yes.
They really are.
Yes.
Every week they play hard.
They do.
The Chiefs are the team, though, that there's nothing they can't do. And Pittsburgh's kind of and it was interesting in the first half with Pittsburgh yesterday how they weren't able to get the run game going and weren't able to just move it up and down the field with Dallas because everybody's done that.
Everybody
against
has.
Dallas. It was weird that they weren't able to do that.
It's just interesting when you see the different levels of motivation. It almost felt like Dallas played much harder than they had been playing. The Steelers weren't necessarily up for that game. Buffalo, you could tell, not to say the Seahawks weren't up for it. Buffalo wanted to make a statement. And that, to me, is why Seattle, though, their team's just so bad. It will be hard with the quality of offenses that they're going to have to face to get to the Super Bowl. It's hard for me to see Seattle being able to win 3 or 4 straight games to win it all with that defense.
Basically, Russ has to play perfect. They're not great on the offensive line, and they're not great on the defensive line. Really, they sacked Allen 7 times, but I think 3 of them were Adams. So they get to him on the blitz, but they can't get home with the 4, and then that's what allows for them to be victimized on the back end. Maybe Dunlap will help them there. The good news for them is I don't know if there's a dominant team in the NFC for them to beat.
They can beat
it might
anybody.
be enough to just have Wilson. It might be enough just for Wilson to be spectacular. He had the end zone interception. He's got to play perfect every time. That's the margin he's graded against.
If the Saints, and when we did the scores, I said the Saints defense can't be bad for this long. There's too much talent on that defense. If they play like that, that's the Saints team we were expecting to see all year. And what's amazing to me is they're what now, 7-2?
I think they have 3 losses. I think they're 6-3.
6-3? And they haven't played well.
think.
That's the first game that they've played well.
Well, and they still have huge limitations in the deep passing game. I mean, it takes Breeze all he can to throw the ball 20 yards.
100%.
I mean,
they're not
they
a
are
vertical
really limited
team
with what they can do.
But what they can,
it's death by 1,000 cuts with them.
Kamara's so good. Thomas is back. Jared Cook is good. Emmanuel Sanders is good. And then that defense played like a year ago. The Saints defense was one of the best in the league. And last night,
also,
they look great.
Tampa did not exactly. I mean, the game plan is ridiculous. They get behind the 2 3 and outs, and then they just panic. I think they only ran it 8 times.
5
in the game.
5
times.
Fewest in a game in NFL history.
Okay. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing?
How do they not even get into the end zone? You've got Tom Brady now with Gronk, Antonio Brown maybe didn't look like he knew exactly where he was supposed to be all the time, but he still looked fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean have not gotten Heath Evans in the offense at all season.
No,
can't find him. Can't.
He's a
unlock
goal line
him.
target. Mike Evans has been wasted.
Right, and Brady is throwing it down the field, so it was a strange day in the league, and a reminder that on any given Sunday, right?
That's why we've got to get into the playoffs. That's why some of those results were bad for us. I mean, those were bad.
Yeah.
If you were rooting for anything this past Sunday, you were rooting for, honestly, you should have been rooting for the Ravens to take the Colts down. You were rooting for the Chargers to beat Vegas, and you were absolutely rooting for Arizona to beat Miami.
Yep. And that's something I want to get into next in terms of the threat level of the teams that you mentioned as they stand in the way of us. We've got to take care of our business, but of those teams, which ones feel real? We will get into that. One thing I wanted to mention, the tragic passing of Alex Trebek. You know, he's one of the last in the line, guys, of people who have been with us our entire lives. There used to be television news anchors that were this, whether it was Cronkite and then Brokaw, rather Jennings, like they were in your home every day for your life. Now, the way we consume news has changed so much in the last decade that that's not the case anymore, and those jobs are constant turnover. But Trebek has been there our entire life, hosting that show, and it's been on the same time our entire life, and he got to the point where he's bigger than the show. And his passing at age 80, and I don't know, is there a show without Alex Trebek? I don't know what that even looks like or how you would even do that, but what an incredible legacy he left. And as just one of those guys, there aren't any. I mean, Sajak is still out there, but there's not many of those guys who have just in every home in America every night, guys, for 40 years.
No, and I mean, I was gonna say the guy's appeared in Saturday Night Live skits as a character to have as Trebek to play off of for like 3 decades.
Right. I know. Yeah, it goes way back. I mean, man.
Way back. He is absolutely part of our culture. He's a part of Americana. It's so sad. It's very sad, and there aren't a lot of people like that. It's just like 2020. What? Enough.
What a crud year.
Crud.
Year. Pure crud. Although we do have good news on vaccine today, so that's good to see.
Yeah.
Potentially 90% on the Pfizer vaccine, so that's good. That potentially could be some very good news there. So, look, we only have a month and a half left of this thing, so hopefully we can just get through it and get to 2021 as quick as possible. We will go over what we just discussed, the threat levels of these other teams in the AFC, an AFC playoff picture that's maybe a little more convoluted than we thought a week ago based on what happened this weekend. Off and running here on a Monday edition, Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Snapple. I want to tell you about my great friends at Weather Seal Home Services. Listen, they're your go-to for any home improvement need. Guys, it's November. While it's beautiful this weekend, you know it's not going to last. You know, snow, ice, wind, they're coming. Don't get stuck in the cold with a leaky roof. Let the team at Weather Seal help you with their great roof offer. It's just $1 down. It's 7 years. It's 0% financing. You get the new roof that you know that your home needs, and you can have the peace of mind this winter as well. Don't delay. Call them today. Give Weather Seal a call, 877-351-SEAL, or visit weathersealhomeservices.com. That sale ends at the end of this month, November 30th. Approved credit prior sales are excluded. 877-351-SEAL, or visit weathersealhomeservices.com. So we have the Miami Dolphins entering the fray. We knew that Las Vegas would be in the mix, which is why we thought that game last week was so critical because it was basically a 2-for-1 game. But this Miami team in the mix is an interesting one for a couple of reasons. Number one, they play at an incredibly high level defensively. They just do. They get after it defensively. They got playmakers on defense. And I did not have Tua Tagovailoa playing like that in start number 2 after what I saw in start number 1.
Yeah, he looked great. Emmanuel Ogbah, another former Brown, had that big sack strip fumble that led to a touchdown for the Dolphins. They're playing very good football. They look very legit to me. I don't see any reason to say that they're not legit. And let's take a look at their schedule because I do think it's a little bit concerning if you're from a Brown standpoint. The next 4, Chargers, Denver, Jets, Cincinnati.
Well, I mean, 3 of those are frisky. Denver can be frisky.
Chargers can be frisky.
Chargers
and
obviously are, and the Bengals. So that is the Jets they obviously ought to be able to handle, but at least there are 3 frisky teams. They'll probably be favored in all 4 of them, though, right?
Home for the Chargers, home for the Bengals, at Denver. I would imagine they'll be favored.
Maybe
in all 4.
Denver might be a slight favorite, like 2.5 or something like that.
I would imagine they'll be
it'd be small.
Probably favored in all 4. Now the final 4, this is where it gets hard. Kansas City, New England, at Vegas, Week 16.
Wow, that's huge.
One must lose. Buffalo in Buffalo, Week 17. That final 4, they'll be favored in 1 of those 4 games. So they're probably favored 5 of the final 8.
Unless Buffalo's already secured itself at that point and not playing for the 1.
All right, so that's a look at Miami. But if they follow that, we're talking probably being favored 5 out of 8.
Yep. Yeah, and that would be 10-6 if they handle their business in all of them,
Now, they could collapse, obviously, but that final stretch is very, very difficult. But you're going to have to keep pace here in this stanza. As for the Raiders, again, next 4, Denver, favorite. Kansas City, not favorite, I would guess, even though they've beaten them already.
Right.
At Atlanta, that's a frisky Falcons team all of a sudden. At the Jets.
Yeah.
And then their final 4, home versus the Colts, playoff implication game. Home versus the Chargers, home versus Miami, at Denver. I think their schedule is easier than Miami's.
I would agree. I think at this point the Raiders feel very, very good about where they are and about being a playoff team. The hard thing for us is we were talking about 3 teams for 2 spots a week ago, and the 5 ahead of us have all separated. So Baltimore wins, Tennessee wins, Buffalo wins. Now those are all 7-2 or 6-2. The Chiefs are 8-1. The Steelers are 8-0. I don't see any of those 5 teams falling off.
It's 4 teams for 2 spots.
So it's 4 teams now for 2 spots. And a week ago it was 3 teams for 2.
Miami's
because
won
you
4
didn't have
in a row.
Miami into the Miami's won 4 in a row. So that's the circumstance of what's changed, and that's why duplicating. It's going to take it. I'm with Gibby. I think he brings a solid point. I think 10-6 is the number, and a lot of that, as you just went through those 2 schedules, is the wild incompetence around the rest of the league.
Yeah.
That's the other part. Is there a lot of gimme wins, or what feels like gimme wins on the schedule? We'll continue to dive into this coming up next with the Hoff. It is the Joe Thomas Hour. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back in. And now the Joe Thomas Hoff half hour of the program. Before we do that, though, injuries during your childbirth require experienced counsel. Call the lawyers at Elk & Elk for a clear answer as to what happened during your child's birth. Elk & Elk, a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. Call 1-800-ELK-OHIO today as we bring in the Hoff. No Browns yesterday, obviously, my friend. What was your Sunday like without a Browns game to be centered around?
Well, it's sad on one hand because you don't get that emotional roller coaster that the Brownies seem to always provide on Sundays, but it does give you a little more free time because you don't necessarily have to sit down and, be ready for the start of the game. So I actually did a little hunting with some buddies this weekend in Wisconsin. The weather was beautiful to be out sitting in a tree. Unfortunately, the deer did not cooperate. They didn't think the weather was as nice as I did.
You bow or rifle? What are you doing, Joe?
Yeah, right now we're bow hunting, and we've got a couple weeks, and then our rifle season starts in Wisconsin.
All right.
So Joe didn't have any luck in the tree, and your son, Bootsy, left his tree post in your laser tag game and got wiped out.
Yeah,
What?
so this was not a good day, Joe, because, my 4-year-old son, it was me against the three boys in laser, or me and my youngest Bootsy against the oldest and middle boy in laser tag after dark, and while you had the determination and the diligence to stay in your tree hang looking to try and waiting for those deer, my young 4-year-old Bootsy thought that it was best to go out on the hunt. We were defeated 2-1. So sad.
Oh, no.
Sad all around for all of us,
Defeat.
although we did enjoy the outdoors.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, when you get these just crazy rare days in the Midwest in November and it's 70 degrees, you got to go outside because it doesn't matter what you do. You're just going to remember it because it's just so rare. I remember like 10 years ago, we had a Thanksgiving like this that was super warm, and we went up to my wife's cabin and got out on the lake, did some canoeing, just doing something that you normally shouldn't be able to do in the Midwest. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's fun. Go spend some time with the kids. And it corresponded perfectly with the Browns bye week. So thank you, schedulers, for giving us a little free time and being able to go out and enjoy God's green earth on a little bye weekend.
I was saying earlier on the show, I don't recall ever there being an intersection of such perfect weather and the Browns bye week simultaneously. It was glorious. It was just a real treat. I got out. I got to get on the links a little bit, sous vide some ribs, and then had those outside, watch some football outside. It was just a real treat. But unfortunately, in our inaction, the playoff picture has changed without us doing anything, which is very sad, Joe.
Well, it's, in my opinion, still just a fuzz early to be getting too wound up about where the playoff picture sits, because I think, a lot can happen, obviously. And I still feel pretty good as long as the Brownies take care of their business here down the stretch. And I think one of the big things is hearing that Nick Chubb.
Yes, Nick Chubb.
This weekend, and that got me pretty excited. And so, how with the playoff picture? We're going to get Nick Chubb back, so it doesn't matter.
Joe, the Dolphins did enter the fray, though. That was a result I didn't see happening. They've won 4 in a row. Tua looked great as they outlasted Arizona out in the desert. Kyler was spectacular as well, but the Dolphins outlast them, and they're pretty frisky on defense. They can make some plays. They can get after you at the quarterback. They're playing very sound there. That was a team that I didn't have in the mix. It seemed like they were punting with Fitzmagic when they made the move, but the way Tua has played last week told me a lot. And Nathan and I were kind of going over their road to the playoffs, and it's manageable. It's definitely manageable for them if he can continue to play close to that level.
Yeah, it does stink to have all these other teams that you had already really kind of crossed off now that they're playing good football and they're getting into the playoff race. Now the Brownies got more teams to think about. But you're right. I mean, when Tua got named the starter, I think like everybody else, we kind of expected, they wrote the season off, and so they really want to just kind of get Tua some reps, get him some experience, see what they got for next year. But after this past weekend, I think things have changed a little bit because you saw what they saw from him when he was at Alabama, that leadership, that ability to, when maybe their back's against the wall a little bit, go down the field, get the scores that you need. I mean, that's exactly what you want in your franchise quarterback. And I, for one, was saying it was stupid for them to put Tua in the game when Fitzpatrick was doing such a good job for him. But they've already made me eat a little crow after last weekend. So who knows? What do I know anyway?
Huff, you were wise. Don't begin doubting yourself right now. Let it all play out. It's too early to start doubting yourself, as you just said, about the playoff picture. But for the Browns, when you watch those games, and I'm sure you're paying close attention, the Browns were to, the Raiders and the Chargers and the Dolphins and the Cards, when you see that, you're laser focused on what you have to do. But coming off the bye, avoiding back-to-back losses, beating this Texans team, does it ratchet up in the building? Does it ratchet up in the locker room? Do guys talk about this? Is this something that anybody's even paying attention to?
I was only involved in really 2 playoff races in 11 years, so I wish I could say I was an expert at this. But I'll reflect back my freshman year, my rookie year, when we had Romeo Crennel, who went through a lot of playoff races throughout his career as a head coach and as an assistant in New England. And he did a good job of just kind of keeping it about us. And I think that's the important thing. And I'm sure Kevin Stefanski has the same approach, where let's just talk about us. Let's take care of our business, and that playoff picture takes care of itself. But if you're watching all these other games and you're worried about everything else that's happening around you, it kind of gives you that emotional roller coaster that we as fans, we love it. Like, that's a great part about being a fan, is going through that emotional roller coaster and watching all these other games because they matter. It makes me think about, like, when Big Ten football wasn't being played at the beginning of the college football season, I didn't care what was going on. And it was really hard for me to sit down on a Saturday and watch these SEC games and ACC games because Big Ten wasn't playing. But now that Big Ten is playing and rankings matter again, now I'm all of a sudden back in watching all these other games. And so it makes it just so much more fun. And I think that's what it is for a fan right now. We're watching these other games that maybe who usually cares what the Dolphins are doing, but now that we're competing for a playoff spot potentially with them, now that's a game we're going to be watching. But as a player, you don't want to go through those emotional roller coasters that a fan does, because you got enough stuff to worry about just trying to prepare for that weekend's opponent. And I talk about your brain like a bucket, right? There's only so much water that a bucket can hold. There's only so much information and focus that your brain can hold during a week. Normally, you're getting everything you possibly can just trying to get ready for your opponent. And if on top of that, you're worried about what another team is doing or who won and who lost, now you're just filling your brain with unnecessary stuff, and you're getting that emotional roller coaster started that, if all of a sudden, like, let's say the Dolphins win again or some other teams and you get knocked down a spot, even if you don't lose, maybe there's a tiebreaker issue or something. Now you as a team might be a little bit down emotionally going into a practice or going into a game, and it had nothing to do with what you did. And so I think it's important for those players to just focus on what they can control, and the playoff picture takes care of itself at the end.
Knowing what we're dealing with in this country with this pandemic, and I'm sure you saw Tom Pelissero put out what the NFL was talking about, that if meaningful games are missed, not every team has to play the same number of regular season games. They could expand the playoffs to 8 teams on each side, each conference. Does it almost, do you think Kevin Stefanski is almost stressing, look, we don't know how many more games are going to be played. If you're the Browns, it's hard. The players aren't going to look at it, but I'll say it. Your New York back-to-backs, that's week 15 and 16. You've got to get there. Those are 2 that you're counting in your column. But who knows? Who knows, honestly, what's going to happen in terms of getting there. Do you almost have to take on, and I know Kevin Stefanski, it's been his mantra from the beginning, 1-0 that week, but you almost have to look at each week as a playoff game in a way.
Well, I think that's kind of what the 1-0 mentality speaks to is, hey, we want to go 1-0 like this is the playoffs. Because if we lose, obviously not technically, but we want to have the same sense of urgency as it is the playoffs, where if we lose, we're done. And so that's kind of what, to me, 1-0 means. And I think that's where the focus needs to be, because if you start looking ahead and say, oh, we got to win these games because these games are a little bit tougher, like, you just can't let your mind go into the fan mode, because then all of a sudden now you're thinking like, well, maybe I'll save myself a little bit this weekend because we probably won't win this one and we really need to win the next one. And you start going through all those machinations, and they're all bad. So as a player, it's best to just avoid it. It's like when I first came out in the NFL, people were still reading newspapers and not getting their information online, but it was like, don't read the newspapers. Like, that was the big thing. And it was tough, as a rookie, especially when we were playing well and, we're winning 10 games my rookie year. It was tough not to read the newspaper because they were saying a lot of good stuff about us. But you want to get into that habit, and you want to build that habit of not thinking like a fan, just like you want to build the habit of not reading the newspaper or reading the press clippings, because when you're going well and things are doing good, like, you don't want to get too high and feel too good about yourself and take things for granted or take somebody lightly. And just like then when it flips, you don't want to think you're worse than you really are. And so just keep the focus where it needs to be. I think that's important, and that's something that a young team needs to hear because it is hard and because of how exciting the playoff race is.
And just one quick postscript on what Nathan was just talking to Joe about with the playoff picture to 16. The key here is if the 256 game regular season is played, or if games are unable to play do not otherwise affect eligibility or seeding for the postseason. So as of now, we haven't had that. So that's the big part of it. So in other words, if one of these bad teams, and this is where it would be, to your point, Z, if the two New York teams somehow have some outbreak and they can't play, and that would affect us, and we would be in the playoff picture. But if there's instances where games are canceled and teams are out of it, then that would not impact the playoff picture, and so it would stay at the 14. It is, as you can tell, a very fluid situation. Speaking of fluid situations, we get back to a little fluidity. Guys getting on the practice field here in about 15 minutes, and the task is taking on a Houston Texans team that certainly is dangerous. We'll get a preview of that coming up next. You're listening to the Joe Thomas Hoff Half Hour here on Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. In 1946, Browns Nation was born. For generations, we've witnessed great hits, great runs, have enjoyed game day with legends. Renew your 2021 membership to be part of our 75th anniversary celebration. Visit memberships.clevelandbrowns.com or call your rep today. That will be a special season. No doubt the Hoff will play a big role that season, and he's with us here now on the Joe Thomas Half Hour of Cleveland Browns Daily. It is the Texans this week. I got to tell you, Joe, I know they have 2 wins. I understand it. They fired their coach. But I also know they have Deshaun, and I know they have Fuller and Cooks. I know they can't run it, but they can spin it. And it just doesn't feel like a normal 2-6 team to me, Hoff.
It doesn't, and they've been playing a lot better since they fired Bill O'Brien, as you mentioned. And Deshaun Watson's been playing MVP football these last really 6 games. I think he's completing almost 70% of his passes. Averaging over 300 yards per game, 116 with the quarterback rating, and he's doing a lot with his feet. And I think that's a big key lately for the Houston Texans is Deshaun Watson's ability to pick up those first downs that most quarterbacks can't on those like 3rd and 6 when everybody's covered, maybe things are dropping into coverage. For him to be able to get out and scramble and pick up maybe 10 and keep the chains moving is huge, and he's really used that to his advantage. Over the last 6 games, he's averaged over 25 yards rushing in each of those last 6 games. And he had another couple big rushes last weekend. So I think that'll be one of the keys for the Browns is being able to obviously try to hold up in coverage because you mentioned Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks are playing good football. And Deshaun Watson certainly has a good rapport with those guys. But once you keep things covered, then you got to have your eyes on the quarterback because he is the guy that's going to make everything work on that offense. And for him to extend plays and steal those cheap 3rd downs with his legs is devastating for a defense when you feel like you did everything possible, you did it all right, and then the quarterback sneaks through and picks up a first down.
He's got at least 25 yards rushing in 4 straight, as you mentioned, Hoff. He rushed for 50 in this past game against the Jags with some back-breaking ones. But here are the numbers for me. Last 3 weeks in a row, he's averaging over 300 yards passing per game, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. And it doesn't matter that they can't run it. They've got Will Fuller, who scored in 6 straight games, which is the longest such streak as in terms of receiving touchdowns, 6 straight, since Antonio Brown had 8 straight in 2018, which seems like another football lifetime ago. And then they've got Brandon Cooks, who's also on pace for 1,000 yards. This is a dangerous team. And Joe, this is coming from our statistician and research expert, Gibbe. He says the Browns have not beaten the Texans since your rookie year. Does that matter? Is that a psychological thing? Deshaun Watson undefeated against this team? Do things like that matter at all?
No, I think within your division they do. Like when I think about Ben Roethlisberger and the number of times he's beaten the Browns, unfortunately for us, that to me that's psychological, right? Because you play those guys 2 times every single year. But when you're out of division and you're the Houston Texans, you only play them, once every few seasons. I don't think it's as big of a psychological advantage unless it was the same guys doing it over and over again. And you mentioned in 2007, obviously Deshaun Watson wasn't there. J.J. Watt wasn't even there. I think in that game, I remember we beat the Houston Texans and they had Mario Williams was their defensive end I played against in that game.
Sure.
They had, I think Steve Slayton may have been their running back at the time. So it was a totally different cast of characters. Maybe even Matt Schaub was quarterbacking. But anyways, everybody was different back then, Browns and Texans. So I think that stuff really probably doesn't matter in this game.
One of those things, though, you don't know if Deshaun keeps a list of the people who passed on him. Is he keeping a list of teams who you sure you don't want that bad? And
as in traded out of the spot, opting not to draft him for the.
That's the.
Yeah, that was
right.
us. Only us. Forget listed teams. Only we said we would rather trade this pick than pick you.
Yeah. And that happened. So what pick did we have that year? So Miles went 1, and then what's the pick that Houston?
12.
It's
12.
12.
100%, Gibby. 12.
Yep, 12. So then we trade. So we could have had at that point in that draft, you could have had Miles and Deshaun in that draft.
That's
so
right. Without
you can
moving.
See maybe how that.
Without moving.
Without doing anything, just staying where you're at. And you see how I can see how that would motivate a player, though. Don't you think, Joe? How if you keep a list?
Yeah, I don't know Deshaun Watson personally, so I guess I don't know his personality, but certainly he seems like a very motivated guy at baseline. And then if you feel disrespected or slighted by a team like the Browns, certainly if the Browns still had the same front office, I could imagine, because when you go through that combine process, you sit down and you meet with all the GMs and you meet with all the head coaches, and you develop a little bit of a relationship with all those teams, especially when you're a top quarterback. And so I could feel for a guy like Deshaun, if he got a sense like, oh, the Browns, the GM, he really likes me, the head coach really likes me, I think they're definitely going to take me. And all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're thinking, yes, here we go, I'm going to be a Brown. And all of a sudden they trade out. You're like, what the heck, man? I thought we had something, right? It's almost like being left at the altar if you're the girl. And so I could definitely see how he could feel a little bit slighted and want to come back and prove like, hey, you guys screwed up. Although he's already proven that in spades, so I'm not sure he's got anything left to prove.
That's true.
It's amazing looking at their season because he's so good. His quarterback rating has been 109 or higher in 6 straight games. We've gone through the stat of the entirety of Baker's career. I think he's 12-1 in games when his quarterback rating exceeds 100. This guy's done it in 6 straight. They're 2-4. They've only beaten the Jags this year. They're 2 wins. That's the only team they've been able to beat. That's it.
That is a beautiful bit of research right there. I love that.
Which is crazy, though. They played Tennessee tough. Watson in that game goes 28 of 37, which is 76%, 335, 4 touchdowns, no picks, rating of 140, and they lost 42-36. Now, their defense hasn't been great. They've gave up 30 week 1, 30 week 2, 28 week 3, 30 week 4. They beat the Jags, holding them to 14. Gave up 42 in week 6, 35 in week 7 to Green Bay, and now 25 this past week to the Jags. Again, it feels like this is going to be a game where we're going to have to score to keep pace with them because they're going to score.
Yeah,
I mean, I think you're right.
No doubt about that.
Very clearly. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was going to say I watched these guys early on in the season, and there was a lot of reasons that Bill O'Brien got fired, but one of the main reasons, and I think maybe the straw that broke the camel's back, was getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins, right? Because they saw what greatness he was doing with Kyler Murray in Arizona, like leading the NFL right now, I think, in passing or receiving yards. And then in Houston, they just couldn't get anything going anywhere on offense at the beginning of the season. And so that combination was really, I think, a big eye-opener that it was time for the front office, or excuse me, Bill O'Brien was the front office. It was time for the ownership to dump Bill O'Brien. But after they did that, it seems like Will Fuller has come on, and Deshaun Watson, I don't know what was going on, but Bill O'Brien, reportedly has a hand in a lot of things. He's kind of like a Bill Belichick type guy. And so you let him get out of the way, and all of a sudden Deshaun Watson's allowed to be a little bit more of Deshaun Watson, which is what makes him great, talking about extending plays with his feet like he did last week and some of those back-breaking runs. And maybe the leash was a little bit too tight with Bill O'Brien, but when Bill left, now all of a sudden Deshaun Watson playing better. Now he's getting the ball to Will Fuller. He's pushing the ball down the field a little bit more. And so whatever the recipe that they've got going on right now after they got rid of Bill O'Brien has been working pretty good, and that certainly is going to be a tall task for this Browns defense and Browns secondary that has struggled, especially in recent weeks.
Well, hey, and they're motivated because they think they got a shot to reel off 8 straight now at this point. Beyond that, though, they don't have their draft picks. So they've got to take care of their own business and handle their business here because it's not like they can play for a pick. That's just not the way it's going to go. So I think they will be motivated and play well. Joe, how many times you go up against JJ with Badger on Badger crime?
Yeah, there was a lot of Badger on Badger crime, especially, I want to say, earlier in his career, because if you watch early on in his career, he played a little bit of over the right tackle, but then he played a lot over the left tackle. And then as he started progressing, there was this big movement in the NFL to put your best pass rusher over the right tackle because most teams had their weaker tackle on the right side. And so kind of towards the end of my career when we match up, it was pretty rarely because for the most part during the game, he was lining up over the right tackle and he would just jump onto my side every now and then. But you can be sure that I was extra motivated when he would line up in the middle of the game on my side, that I did not want to get beat because I knew that my boys back home were watching that lineup, that matchup, and all those Badger fans were going to be definitely zooming in to see who won those few snaps that we won against each other.
When you think about, 100 sacks, that is an incredible milestone that J.J. Watt just hit. What made him so effective? Because at the time, I felt like he was so unlike a pass rusher that we had seen before. It was always typically guys out over the tackles, those edge rushers who would, with the bend, etc. But he was kind of, while he's not the same athlete Aaron Donald was, he was kind of the, in my mind anyway, the forebearer of that real interior pass rush, maybe more Reggie White, certainly, than he was a Derek Thomas.
Yeah, I would say if you talk about what are the two things that made J.J. Watt, one is obviously effort. That has to be the first thing that you talk about. I remember watching him going against the New England Patriots, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, and he almost single-handedly beat that team because he would get his hands up. You guys remember they talk about going into that game where Bill Belichick had all of his defensive linemen holding up like brooms to try to simulate J.J. Watt getting his hands in the air because his nickname was J.J. Swat because of the number of passes he knocked down, the penetration he would get, and how smart he was being able to get his hands in those passing lanes. But I think the unpredictability and the savvy nature of his pass rush moves and in the run game were the other part of what made J.J. Watt so difficult to defend because he was so good at getting his hands on you, and he would give you this just quick little shove and make you get a little bit off balance because it felt like he was going to bull rush you, and then he would just take his hands and snatch you forward, and he'd swim over the top. And he was just so good at kind of reading where your balance was and using it against you. And he had freedom in that defense to go wherever he wanted. This was one of the things I did the Packer game on Thursday, and Mike Pettine's defense was giving up all sorts of yards this season, especially in the rushing attack, because he allows his guys to go backdoor on blocks. And so they're not a gap, one man for every gap defense like a traditional defense is. He lets guys, okay, hey, if you can beat the block, and then try to get back in your gap. Well, J.J. Watt on that defense, it was a fundamentally sound defense, except for he was allowed to go wherever he wanted. And then they specifically had linebackers and safeties behind him that were going to make up for it if, for some reason, J.J. went behind a block and he didn't make the play. But the guy was so good that it was pretty rare that he would leave his gap and then not make the play. And so he was able to make so many plays because as an offensive tackle, if I know that it's an outside zone maybe to my side and I'm going to start reaching that direction, I'm expecting that defensive end because of where the defense is. He owns that gap, so I know he's going to run with me. Well, JJ would break those rules, and so he'd take one step with you, and as soon as you're about to make contact, he would leave his gap and jump inside, and then he was quick enough to be able to get back in his gap and to make a tackle for a loss. But it led to a lot of hesitancy on the offensive line because you don't know what he's going to do. He's not following his rules. He's not doing what he's supposed to, and then that's when he bull rushes you and pushes you back into the quarterback. And then the next time you think, okay, now I better get a little bit stronger and get bigger with him. Well, now he's going to swim you and get to the quarterback. So he was just so savvy and so smart, and he combined that with incredible, unrelenting effort like you've never seen in the NFL. And he was the greatest defensive player of our generation until Aaron Donald showed up.
Yeah. Joe, when were you first aware of him in Wisconsin, both being Wisconsin natives? Did you hear that Watt family growing up?
I grew up probably 7 miles from J.J. Watt.
Wow.
I grew up right on this road called Springdale Road, and it was the dividing line between Brookfield and Pewaukee, and he grew up in Pewaukee, so just over the line. So he was a good bit younger than me. I think he's 6 years younger. So I never knew about him when I was in high school, but when I got to college, I would come home in the summers, and I would train at this local gym called Next Level, and he was a high school kid at the time, and he would train there. So I'd see him, and then the trainer would introduce me to some of the high school kids that were there. And Kevin Zeitler actually was one of the guys that used to train there that grew up kind of near where I was. And so there was a lot of future NFL guys that grew up in that area that trained there. But not until I graduated or got drafted, and then year 4, I think the NFL had the lockout. And JJ was preparing to go into the draft that year. And so we had remained in contact just from growing up kind of in the same area. And during the lockout, he actually let me borrow his moped because I didn't have a car when I was back in Madison during the lockout, just training at Wisconsin. And he had left to go train at, one of these fancy places in Florida or Arizona. So that was my big JJ Watt connection after high school. Was I borrowed his moped for the lockout and used to drive it to my workouts.
That is an awesome one.
Incredible. And I want to say real quickly, you're listening to 850 WKNR Cleveland. Go ahead, Z.
All right, Joe. So you were talking about a great player on defense like a J.J. Watt who sometimes can get freedom. We were talking about something before that we didn't know the answer to. So whenever we don't know anything about football, we say, let's go to the learning tree. Let's go to the Hoff. Why do certain teams, and you would remember famously Darrelle Revis, for example, have their top corners follow the other team's top receiver wherever they go? And other teams like the Browns right now, where we clearly, I would say, have a number one corner, no disrespect to Money Mitch or Kevin Johnson, but Denzel Ward is the best corner that we've got. We have had problems in our secondary, but we never have him follow the top guy. He just plays his side of the field exclusively. And maybe it's just I misremember, but I felt like Dion would follow and take away and shut down whoever Dion was going against. And it seems that there's a change, and maybe it started in Seattle with the Legion of Boom, where I know Sherman played just on his side, et cetera. What's the thinking there? Why does it happen, and why would you think more teams don't follow? Because and teams in the NFL right now absolutely have guys that follow the number ones, period. The Browns just aren't among them.
Yeah, I think a lot of things can go into that decision, and I don't know Joe Woods' background as well as maybe I should for this question. Had I known it was coming, I may have done a little bit more research. But I think one of the aspects is if you're a team that plays a lot of zone coverage, like the Legion of Boom was when Sherm was there. I mean, they played almost exclusively cover three. Like that's all they did. It's a lot easier when you're playing zone to kind of get left and right. Like it's not quite as much as being like a left tackle or a right tackle, but it's more like being a left defensive end or a right defensive left. And then we can kind of build our coverages and our blitzes and our structure off of that, because I know for a fact if I'm a defensive coordinator and I'm calling a field blitz, which is the wide side of the field, I know who's going to be doing that blitzing. And I don't have to worry about.
You saw the Packers on Thursday. Best team in the NFC is who in your mind?
Boy, I was saying it was the Seahawks up until this weekend. I just loved how Russell Wilson was playing. I thought he was the league MVP thus far, and even though their defense is doo-doo and actually worse than Dallas, which is amazing when you say that. For people that watch the NFL, to say that a defense is worse than Dallas is like blasphemy. Yeah. But the Seahawks actually have a worse defense, and they are supposed to have a defensive coach. Like Pete Carroll built his reputation being a defensive coach, and they're terrible. And so after watching what the Bills and Josh Allen did to the Seahawks, I have to rethink who the best NFC team is. And I like the Packers, honestly. I know that they had a little bit of a stretch here a couple games ago where they didn't look great, but the way Aaron Rodgers is playing, the way he has really embraced Matt LaFleur's wide zone, Kyle Shanahan type system, the way they've meshed the two things, the two brains, has been really fun to watch. And Devontae Adams is playing lights out. They're going to get Aaron Jones back, or they got Aaron Jones back on Thursday, and he's one of the best and one of the more underrated running backs in the NFL. And, you know, I think there was a lot of criticism, being that I live in Wisconsin right now, towards Mike Pettin and the job that the defense had been doing. But I think a little bit of it was unfair, and they played obviously much better against the JV squad from the Niners here on Thursday night. But I think that defense will get back to what they were last season, which was a pretty darn good defense. And so I like the Packers as the best team in the NFC right now.
Great stuff as always, Hoff. Thanks for your time, buddy. We'll talk to you next week.
Pleasure's all mine. Thanks, gentlemen.
All right, Legend. That was the Joe Thomas half hour, and maybe we got a little extra 8 minutes or so out of him.
Yeah,
we will go. I think we did. We'll go around the league. A full slate of games. Z and I, Red Zone. We took it all in. We'll go through them all coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, looking to refinance or purchase a home at Union Home Mortgage, the process is simple and straightforward. Loan officer is going to keep you in the loop all the way to the end zone. Visit unionhomemortgage.com to get a mortgage you'll rave about. Union Home Mortgage. Promises kept. Union Home Mortgage Corp. NMLS 2229 is an equal housing lender. Gibby, do you want to administer this?
Give it.
You going to administer the one takes? Let's do
Sure,
it.
I can. Yeah.
I would
why
like you
not?
to. I think it'd be great.
That's wonderful. Yeah, because
That's
that
wonderful.
way then you can both give us your thoughts.
There
It
you
is a
go,
one
see?
take Monday.
See.
So I
One
give you
take,
the
yep.
game. You give me one take.
How many?
Okay.
One Zegura.
Does that mean
Singular.
can one sentence contain two takes?
No.
No. How about
know.
I didn't need to say anything.
We live in a society.
Oh.
Bishop's heel turn is beginning. Make note of it. We've seen
There
it
are rules.
over
I
the
love
last
it.
7 days in
I
November.
love it.
We've seen it.
There
The
are
pandemic
rules. We
has
live in a
finally worn
society.
him down.
Week 35.
There we go. All right, one take on a Monday, week number 9 in the NFL. New Orleans 38, Tampa Bay 3. Zegura, one take, go.
Beat down. And this is the Saints defense I've been waiting to see. We saw it. That makes them dangerous.
I will go to the other side. There's something not quite right with Tampa Bay offensively. New Orleans coming around defensively, but there's something not quite right with Brady and the way that this is all being called, and he's just not quite comfortable. It is just nonsense for them to not score a touchdown, and something's not quite right there. And I don't think adding Antonio Brown is going to make it any better. I really don't.
So here's my follow-up. Does Bill Belichick miss Tom Brady more than Tom
Yes.
Brady misses Bill Belichick?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Does Tom Brady miss?
Brady's going to the postseason.
Does Tom
Yeah.
Brady miss Josh McDaniels more than
Sure.
Bruce Arians? Does he wish
Does
he
he
had
wish he had Josh McDaniels? Yes. But he
Just-
still is better off.
For just so we keep some perspective here. Brady's completing 66% of his passes, up from last year. His yards per attempt are up from last year. He's thrown 20 touchdowns with 7 interceptions. It's not like they're terrible, but when they're
No.
not right, it's looked bad.
It's really not right. When they're not
Yes.
right, it's really bad, and it's twice against the Saints.
He's on pace for 4,800 yards, almost, or 4,600 yards, 39 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. I mean, he's still
No question. He's having a great year.
still quite good.
Methinks
Yeah.
it has something to do with the coaching. And we'll leave it
I agree.
at that. Up
I think
next
they like
on a
this.
one-take Monday, Pittsburgh 24, Dallas 19. Bishop.
Pittsburgh survive in advance. Win when you don't have your ace stuff, and they did. They found a way. They gutted it out, and this is what the great teams do. Look, it's the NFL. Everybody's professionals. But to win when you don't have your A game is impressive, and they did.
Zegura.
Thank God I did not have to read 8 billion angry Garrett Gilbert tweets that he owns Roethlisberger and why did we get rid of Garrett Gilbert? Thank God for that.
God, that-
True.
That
So
would've been awful.
true. Up next, Kansas City 33, the Panthers 31. Theodore with a nice little effort, but they fall short, Zegura.
The play where he ran and then propelled himself in the air and was kind of carried on the backs of defenders 5 yards down the field to pick up a first down was just, that's all
Theodore?
you need to know about Theodore. Just a treat to watch the guy play. And Curtis Samuel, wow, what a performance by him. He was insane.
Bishop?
Yeah, they are really fun offensively. I
bad
hope
team.
the rumors and you hope that the rumors you're hearing about McCaffrey and the shoulder are untrue. That would be just awful to have him back and then to lose him right away again. But I will. It is a one take, so my one take will be this one. 2,687 yards, 25 touchdowns, 1 pick.
It's the best anybody's ever
Patrick
been through 8 games. Or 9 games. Is it
25
9 games for him?
2-1. Did you see the play where he went in motion?
Yes.
Went in motion, came back around. Yeah, it's 9 games. They're 8-1. Went back around, reverse field, and then he just throwing
Ridiculous.
He's another level.
Russ last year had set the record, 22 touchdowns to 1 interception, and now 1 year later, he does it 25 to 1, which is just ridiculous.
Yep.
Up next, guys, Miami 34, Arizona 31. Bishop.
Well, looks like Miami's got a guy. I mean, Kyler was great, but I think Miami's got a guy in Tua. I mean, the growth from week 1 start to week 2 start to stay in it. He's a little more elusive than I remember him at Alabama. He had a huge scramble to pick up a first down. A lot of excitement for Miami, unfortunately for us, as they move to 5-3 into the playoff picture.
Zegura.
Kyler is sensational. Cliff may be a good offensive schemer, but I think his in-game decision-making is bad, and I think it is hurting that team. They should have gone for it instead of kicking that field goal. He had another bad decision where I think he settled for bad. It's bad game management. Play to your strengths, understand situational football, and I think that team would be even better than they are. They don't. I just didn't understand what I was seeing half the time.
Another wild and crazy game on Sunday. Buffalo 44, Seattle 34. Zegura, I believe back to you here.
This is what I've been saying all along about Seattle's D. It's why I couldn't put him upper echelon regardless of how great Russ is. DK Metcalf is an absolute joy to watch play the game. Might be the most fun guy in the league, but they can't really run it, and that's not Chris Carson dependent. He was doing his best work as a pass catcher earlier, but that defense, I think, has, 7 games left? 8 games if they've had their bye? 8 games they have. 8 games left to get it stuff together so that a team and a quarterback that deserves to win a Super Bowl again gets an opportunity to do that.
That's the obvious, and I agree with all of it. Here would be the flip side of it. I alluded to this earlier. I'm very close to putting Buffalo into the Baltimore category of they can win it all if they play with the lead. I think that's a very hard team to come back on. Their secondary is really good. They're better. They might be even better defensively than Baltimore. They're right there. And I think Allen, when he plays with the lead, plays really loose and is a beast. I mean, 400 yards. I realize Seattle stinks, but he's done this against other teams too. And they have a recipe when they play in front. It's hard to chase them. So I'll go that from the Buffalo perspective.
Baltimore 24. Speaking of Baltimore, Baltimore 24, Indy 10. Bishop, your take.
No huddle. So they couldn't get anything going offensively. They come out at half and they go tempo. And it woke everything up, unfortunately, for us and for everybody in the AFC. I don't know if it'll be something that will transition to every game they play, but they were able to get the offense going when they went no huddle in the second half.
They're still not right. That definitely provided a spark. But my big takeaway from this game is I don't know any longer what a catch is, what an interception. I don't know anything. That was one of the most bizarre calls, and that really was a huge momentum shifter in that game. If a receiver did that, there's no chance that's a catch.
Right.
How's that interception?
Yeah.
I thought that was stunning. But they still seem, and this is when even Pedro chimed in, Ravens offense doesn't look the same, Nate. Got that text. So I agree. There's something wrong with their offense.
Pedro's watching Red Zone?
Oh, yeah. He's fired up.
And his new TV?
Oh, yeah, on the new TV. Loves it.
Right.
Game changer.
All right. Well, good. At least he's got the new TV up and running. Up next, Tennessee 24, Chicago 17. Zegura, the floor, yours.
Exactly how I thought this would go. This game was not nearly as close as this final score would indicate. It was not a one-possession game. Chicago did all of its offense, in the last half of the fourth quarter, 2 touchdowns to make it somewhat respectable. No. Chicago offense is not good. It's not good. Their defense is pretty good. Offense not good. This went perfectly to form.
Yeah, the big takeaway here is clearly Matt Nagy, you feel like they want to do what they did in Kansas City, and they didn't ever build, and Orlovsky was huge on this last year, they never built something around Trubisky's skill set, so they have Foles, and they still have no clue what they're doing from a game plan standpoint, and the shine off there, but it's the Chicago offense that's the story, because the defense deserves better, frankly.
Yeah, I got a
defense
feeling,
played pretty well against
the
Tennessee.
GM and the coaching staff may be packing up come the first week in January. Up next, Raiders 31, the favorite hard luck losers of the NFL, the Chargers 26. Beau?
Justin Herbert. I mean, as impressive as Joe Burrow has been, Herbert is every bit as impressive. The kid, I saw a lot of this game yesterday. His ability to make every throw, to throw at the last second, he's more elusive than I thought he would be. I was so wrong on him. He is, man, is he impressive. He would be, you redraft in the NFL, he would go very, very high. He is really impressive. I know they're losing, but you know that they're winning in the long run with that kid.
They don't know how to win a football game, which is just stunning.
No.
It is it's crazy. My takeaway from this was that the Raiders, maybe learning to run the ball against us, makes them very dangerous on offense. They ran for 26 carries, 160 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game. If they can run it, you know they can throw it, and they can throw it down the field. Nelson Aguilar again with another bomb touchdown, his 4th of more than 20 yards on the year. I think just that balance and that efficient, they looked pretty good to me, and they really answered the bell in the third quarter. I thought they came out in the second half after giving up 17 to the Chargers in the third quarter and played well down the stretch.
All right, up next, Minnesota 34, Detroit 20. Don't look now. Here come the Vikings, Zegura.
There's only 2 words you need to say.
Dalvin Cook.
That's it, dude. That's it. That's it.
Yep.
I mean, Detroit stinks, but Detroit can't have nice things. Like, these are long days on DLD. These are long days because, you lose 2 in a row. You felt good coming out. Didn't they get to even Steven at one point a couple of weeks ago, and then they just give it all back. And they can't have nice things. They don't know how to win games, and they don't know how to be consistent week in and week out.
Why, when I watched this game, here was the thing that jumped out to me. Why is Adrian Peterson playing? Why is he receiving carries? Why is he running routes? He was targeted 5 times. 5 times, 3 catches, 14 yards. He averaged 3.6 yards a carry with a long of 8. DeAndre Swift, 13 carries, 64 yards, 5 yards a carry. Kerryon Johnson, 4 for 29.7. DeAndre Swift, 3 catches for 33 yards. Johnson, 3 for 36. Adrian Peterson, love the guy. Legend, for sure. All of that. But he looks like he's running in quicksand, and they are a more dangerous offense with DeAndre Swift on the field. And they're not playing him. And I don't understand it.
I don't know. Up next, the team we face this coming week, I should say. Houston, 27. Jacksonville, 25. Bishop.
Uneasy. That's my feeling. Because we get him this week, and the kid Watson's great, and the receivers are great, and uneasy, unfortunately.
I wasn't impressed by them at all. They can't run the ball. They're unidimensional. Yes, they can throw it, and they throw it very, very well. I didn't think their defense – they're playing Josh Luton.
Yep. It doesn't matter, though. Like, look at the Steelers gave up yards to Gilbert. Like, this league now, young quarterbacks can step in and play. It's crazy. It never used to be this way. But you can come off the street and you can play and make plays. I don't know how to make sense of it, but it's true. Luton looked great.
Hold on. The real takeaway here is Luton's spin move
That was good.
Was awesome. It was a great play, and DJ Chark got back into the game again. I don't know.
That's your boy.
It was kind of an ugly game, I thought. It wasn't. There were some great moments. You had the big Chark touchdown, big Cooks touchdown, big Fuller touchdown. A lot of big play potential out there.
All right, just real quick. We got 2 games left. Let's just blow these out. Giants 23, Washington 20, Zegura.
Huge missed opportunity for the Washington football team. But the Giants were frisky, and it was nice to see Jabril Peppers make some big plays in that game.
Bishop.
Yeah, that was what it'd be mine, was Peppers. Peppers is a playmaker. He was better than people remember here.
Yes. Much.
Final one, Atlanta 34, Denver 27, Bishop.
Well, you do this game without Ridley. They do this every week. This time they were able to hold on. But the Atlanta, you're not going to want to play them down the stretch because they can score. They can flat out score.
That was my takeaway. You don't want to play them. The Falcons are a much better team than their record. They're probably the best team relative to their record in the NFL.
I would agree with that. I think them and Houston are the scariest because of their ability to throw the football. in terms of juxtaposed to their record. All right, a very big sports week coming your way as well. Shocking upset in college football as well. We'll get into all of that, plus the scores for New England and the Jets. It's all coming up next. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Nominations for the 2020 Helmets program are now being accepted. Zenith invites you to nominate your Ohio high school to receive $25,000 worth of new Zenith helmets. Visit promotions.clevelandbrowns.com to learn more. Does it feel like Masters Week, Z?
No, but kind of, because I got to play golf outside, but there were obviously no leaves on the trees or any of that. But no, it does not.
Courses were great, though.
Couldn't have been. It was
perfect. Yeah,
it was amazing. It really was incredible. No, of course, it doesn't feel like Masters Week, but I'm pumped for it.
I'm pumped for it now. I'll be pumped for it Thursday and Friday. Will I be paying attention to it Saturday and Sunday opposite college football and the NFL? I don't think I think it'll probably lose there, and I think it'll be like every sporting event that takes place where it's not supposed to. That it will suffer a ratings casualty to the National Football League is probably the way that it will go. I'm fascinated to see the results of that from a rating standpoint, because it's always a ratings behemoth, especially if somehow Tiger can be involved in the weekend, which I think is a long shot.
What does Nance do?
Playing.
Does he do Masters on Sunday?
The golf.
He's off of football this Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
And I can tell you, I want to say
right.
The majority of games have been moved to Fox this week. Like our game, AFC versus AFC is Fox. I think Fox has.
CBS doesn't have a 1 o'clock games?
CBS is aiming to finish the Masters by 4 o'clock so they can have the 4 o'clock slate. But they will not have 1 o'clock.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So CBS punted at 1 o'clock, so they're going to play the Masters early and try to be done at 4 and then into 4. Well, I understand why you would do that.
Next, let me tell you something.
That's right, too.
This Sunday, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 1 o'clock games, all on Fox. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 4 o'clock games.
So the NFL did that to accommodate CBS and the Masters.
Yep.
Straight up. So we play at 1 opposite the Masters.
Yeah.
You
Final
get
round.
Bucks Panthers is probably the best 1 o'clock game. Us Texans is number 2. Football team Lions, Jags Packers, Eagles Giants. That's your 1 o'clock slate. That's the list. Yeah. Bills Cardinals 4:05 CBS. Broncos Raiders, Chargers Dolphins. These are all CBS. And then 4:25 Bengals Steelers is Fox. 4:25 Seahawks Rams, which is the game of the week, is Fox. 49ers Saints 4:25 also Fox.
So the Steelers and Bengals are a Fox game as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and that game moved to 4:25.
Yep.
So what does CBS have in the late window that they're going to have the Masters play into?
Bills Cardinals.
Okay. So that's what you're hoping for.
Broncos,
is
Raiders,
right.
Chargers, Dolphins. Those are their 3.
Couple practice updates for you if you'd like them.
Sure.
Please, yes.
From our good friend Nate Ulrich. Players who returned to practice today, Nick Chubb, obviously. Wyatt Teller, which is huge. Myles Garrett, Jarvis Landry, Jacob Phillips, Andy Janovich. Couple other notes. Chubb wearing a full knee brace but looked good going through individual drills. Joel Bitonio on the bike during the period of practice open to the media. Jack Conklin not on the field.
Again, we've only played 2 full games with our starting offensive line. You certainly would have hoped that this would be number 3 coming up on Sunday, but it'll be interesting to hear what Kevin Stefanski says probably around 3:30, 3:20, 3:30 about Jack Conklin's availability. But it's great news to get Teller back.
Phillips,
back.
Teller,
Phillips
Chubb.
as well. I'm going to go out on a limb right now. You want a little
agree with you.
Dark
Phillips.
horse on a limb? Beau's on. It's a sturdy branch because I think the 3 of us are all on it together, not just a little limb. But I think Jacob Phillips
pity
has.
Both. I can bring it all down.
Jacob Phillips has a role to play for this team, and we're going to need him to play it well, I think, over the second half of the season. This linebacking play's got to be better. That's the thing I'm most interested in is what adjustments have we made as a defense in this bye week?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can continue on the way that it was, and certainly not defending the pass. And so now you're talking about this team coming in here, which is why I said uneasy, because they can go bombs over Baghdad on you in a hurry with Deshaun throwing the ball deep down the field. So that is certainly an element of concern, to say the least. One other thing, just to put a ribbon on the Masters conversation, I am fascinated to see what that course looks like this time of year. We've never seen it. We've just never seen it. I mean, there's without flowers, without but I'm sure they bring flowers in, but will they be different? And then with the leaves starting to change, you lived in Georgia. The weather looks flawless. It looks like it's 70, 72 every day and sunny. But do the leaves start to change this time of year? I would think they would.
Yeah. Now there are a lot of the trees there have like are a pine type of a tree that are down there, and then you've got like the dogwoods.
Evergreen.
You have all the deciduous trees. I would think that those leaves are, unless they did something to try to slow it, they've certainly changed. And I don't know how many of the leaves are on the ground. I mean, it is mid-November. Like they still go through fall.
I would think
in fall in Georgia.
Yeah, it's northern Georgia, so I would think that they would. And so, yeah, to your point, like if you think about all of those ponds and lakes and all of that stuff that are on that course, all those ponds on that course, the creeks, all of those are always in the spring are clear of anything. I mean, they're crystal clear, but leaves will be falling during play.
Yes.
We're dealing with that here. They would be dealing with that there as well. So I don't know, have like leaf blowers blow them off between every shot or something, but I mean they're going to be there.
Tough to hit it off.
Very fascinated to see what the course looks like.
Tough to hit it off the pine needles with leaves.
Yeah.
True.
Little
tougher.
From a play standpoint, unless somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless somehow they get the leaves off. I don't know how you would though. There's no way you could do it. They're going to be falling in real time.
Yeah,
pretty wild.
It's this whole concept of things. I mean, we're looking at morning golf. College game days live from Augusta on Saturday.
Just give me a lot of
I don't understand that.
Give me a DeChambeau runaway in my golf pool. Come on, let's do it. I am told from our golf
I also
correspondent.
feel like the Masters.
By the way, our Augusta correspondent Burns tells me Augusta planted special timely things to add color. So they've done.
Of course they did.
Of course they did.
Who did we have on that talked to us about the course? And they said they don't play, it's not open to members this time of year anyways, because it's getting ready for the following spring or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean it closes and it's closed this time.
Make sure
so my guess is
how they want.
It'll look pristine. Yeah. But I mean there's some things you can't help. I mean, you're going to have leaf changing, which is something you can't help.
Maybe they're injecting, chlorophyll right into their trees with like syringes. Yeah, chlorophyll. Yes. They could have chlorophyll injectors.
They could.
They were shaving trees.
It would all be in play for them.
In California, you got guys shaving trees.
Yeah. There's no doubt. It would be on brand for them to do everything necessary to be able to make it look a certain way.
Yeah.
It does feel like that's a place that would be that they do not want to give that jacket to DeChambeau. Right? I mean, they would not want any part of it.
Oh, I want it.
I know you do. You love him, but I don't know that they do. I feel like is there any way to make it so that when those 400-yard drives hit those fairways, that thing zips out and out of bounds? And he's penalized for it. I don't know.
This course is set up for this. They tried to make all they could do is make it longer because Tiger invented the just bomb and gouge Augusta. That's the one major championship course where you can. I mean, DeChambeau should be getting a green jacket soon.
Yeah. I think DJ looks good in this one. I think
DJ looks great. He also happens to hit it a little bit of a ways.
He does. Yes, he can hit it a little bit of ways. Wild weekend in college football. Notre Dame upsets Clemson. Clemson without Trevor Lawrence in that game, but nevertheless a very, very nice win for Notre Dame that set back Saturday Night Live about a good hour or so on Saturday night. The Buckeyes took care of business. Michigan loses to Indiana. The thing about Big Ten powerhouse programs, Penn State is 0-3. Michigan is 1-2 with a loss to Indiana for the first time, I think, since '88. And Nebraska is 0-2, not good at all. I do think Harbaugh, Gibby asked the question, is it time for a new coach at Michigan? I think Harbaugh is going back to the NFL. I think he floated that story last week to head in that direction. He seems completely like a broken man at Michigan.
Why do you even want I don't know. Does the NFL want him? What's he selling you on? What's his
I think there's just the memory of that, of what he did in San Francisco. And the quick turnaround that he had there, they quickly turned it around. And
time ago,
it was. He also had a quick turnaround at Michigan early, like got him to respectability in a hurry. But then it seems like he just wears out a little bit. And I also think the success his brother has in Baltimore helps him because you feel like, well,
it could
that type of stability. But he's just different. I mean, his brother's normal.
Right. which is a huge difference
different
in and of itself. I was talking with the kid yesterday on the golf course who went to Michigan, a huge Michigan fan. I mean, they're just despondent. They're becoming a basketball school. Their recruiting class in hoops is, number one in the country. Their football team is terrible. He's hoping for, begging for, desperate for Luke Fickell. That's the only name that interests him right now. And I don't see Luke Fickell taking the job.
I think Matt Campbell would crawl from Ames, Iowa to Ann Arbor bare-chested in the middle of January for that job, and I think he'd do a good job. I think Luke Fickell would be very hard for him to coach at Michigan. Everybody has a price, but this is a Buckeye captain. He was a Buckeye interim coach. He's a Buckeye assistant for 20 years. I don't see it. I think if he ever leaves Cincinnati, it would either be if Ryan Day goes to the NFL, which I think is realistic, or if something were to happen at Penn State or Notre Dame. Notre Dame, he's big Catholic. I think Notre Dame would make a lot of sense for Luke as well. I just don't see him ever coaching at Michigan.
Right. He's good in the Midwest, though. He's a great Midwest recruiter,
That's why I mentioned those places.
Yeah, of course.
Because I think that those would fit well. Those would certainly fit well for him. Are you a sports fan looking for a part-time weekend job? Get into the action at First Energy Stadium, home of your Cleveland Browns. Wes is now hiring for part-time event staff and security. Apply online at weshiring.com. Also, knowing one's limit is important, whether it's a snap count for a football player or a spending limit when you're playing the lottery. So if you like to gamble, set a limit beforehand and stick to it. If you want to learn more, very simple, go to keepitfunohio.com for helpful tips on how to keep gambling fun. We will do a Monday edition of The Scores coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Rumpke Waste Recycling, family-owned and operated since 1932. They've been in business for 87 years, keeping neighborhoods clean and green. The customers, employees, and communities are all part of the family. Visit Rumpke.com to learn more. And we have a Monday nighter, and that means a little edition of the Scores. Give me.
Can I interest you?
No, you can't interest me. And by the way, I'd like to go back to what this was when we were going to do. If we had done the scores on Friday for this one, I like what was happening then a lot better than now.
Yeah, because it's a 10, right? In the words of Billy Bob
10.
from Varsity Blues.
Yeah, and before that it was a 7.
Yeah,
that's a big difference.
Yeah, Patriots
2-24.
Oof. Jets 15.
2-5 versus 0-8. Can I interest you in some hot garbage on a Monday?
I'm going the other way this time. For no reason, last Monday night, I went the opposite with the G-men. Lightning is not going to strike twice for these New York franchises. There is a long, storied primetime history between these two. The infamous butt fumble. Things don't go the Jets' way. This is going to be the Patriots. It's going to be the Patriots 17-6.
Oh,
ooh.
That is awful. That is such
but different.
Awful.
Go ahead and just make your plans for this. Make your plans for the Monday night. Don't worry about football tonight.
Hey, by the way, what did Pedro say about the Thursday night? We didn't get a chance to recap the Thursday night debacle to Green Bay.
Nate, that was the JV team, Nate. What do you expect? We're decimated. They're decimated.
I do love the idea of him sitting there in his new TV that you've gotten set up for him, and just a whole new world has opened up for Pedro.
HD, in living color.
It's amazing.
It's beautiful.
Amazing. It's a pretty big difference.
It's just sad that the Niners have been crushed.
30.
Keep it locked here. Coming up here on the next level, they will have Coach Stefanski's presser probably around 3:30. You'll hear that. We're back tomorrow to recap it all and start turning our attention to the Houston Texans. That is tomorrow. Thanks for listening, everybody. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.